Hi and welcome back to Pick Up the Pieces. I am Stacy and we're here in the Pickup Kitchen making some holiday appetizers. So the holidays are definitely coming and I'm getting, my Christmas apron on and getting ready to celebrate with friends and family and to entertain. And sometimes you just need some appetizers, and that is plenty. You don't need to do a big, huge meal, and you can just bring your friends together, maybe do a little ornament exchange or cookie exchange, or just visit and catch up before the craziness of the holidays. And it's nice to put a bunch of appetizers out on the counter, maybe have some alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages available for everybody, and just spend time with each other. So I would like to show you some of our favorite holiday appetizers. And so we're going to get started. So one of the first things we're going to make are some little smokies. Now you can do this in the crock pot on low for 4 hours, or you can just do it in a saucepan on the stove. So whatever works for you and your timeline is what you can do. So I'm going to take one package of these and mix it with a bunch of delicious ingredients. This is a holiday inspired little smoky recipe and we're going to see how we like it. So I'm taking half a cup of cranberry sauce. This is cranberry sauce that we made homemade, and it's got like a little bit of orange flavor to it, which is going to be perfect because there's additional orange flavor in this recipe. We're going to take a quarter cup of brown sugar, and that's homemade brown sugar. We've got about 1/8 of a cup of orange juice. We have half a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and we've got some chili flakes here. These are homemade chili flakes that I made myself. And then some cinnamon, just a pinch of it for some flavor. And now I'm going to mix these all together. And then I'll add my little smokies. And we're just going to simmer this on the stove with the cover on until they're warmed through. Little smokies are already fully cooked, so they're not going to need to cook for very long. But we're just going to get this bubbling, let the sauce thicken a little bit. And I'm sure it's going to be delicious. So I'm just going to add these in. I'll give that another little mix. And now we'll get these cooking. Now you can double this recipe if you're having more people over. The 4 of us tonight are going to be nibbling on all of these appetizers for dinner. So I'm not going to make massive batches of things because we're not going to eat all of it. So these recipes can be easily doubled if you're expecting a bigger crowd. So I'm just going to get this on the stove. So over a low to medium heat, and I put the cover on, and I will show you what they look like as they get closer to being done. Our second appetizer is something that I have been making since high school. And so I took Latin in high school, and if any of my high school friends are watching this, you'll remember Mrs. Wagner, and she was just the best teacher, one of my most memorable teachers that I ever had, and she was our Latin teacher, and she would put on these fabulous parties for Saturnalia, which was like a festival that we celebrated and learned about. And so one of the best things that she would always make for this festival was tiropita, which is basically a cheese pastry made with phyllo, feta, cream cheese, butter, and we looked forward to these every year. She taught us how to make them. She gave us the recipe, and so I've been making these literally since I was 14 years old. So I'm going to make a batch of these now. You can double this recipe and it will make 6 to 7 dozen little pastries. We're making, like I said, a little less because we're just not going to eat them all. You could make full batches of all of these things and probably freeze some of it and then save it for when you do have guests, and you can freeze a lot of these things unbaked or uncooked, and that would be fine. We're just doing kind of small batches because this is going to be our dinner tonight. So I'm starting with some softened cream cheese, and let me just check my smokies. They're starting to simmer in the sauce, so I'm just giving them a little bit of a stir here. And they will be just fine. So 1 brick of cream cheese softened. To that, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of melted butter, and the rest of that butter is going to be used with the pastry. I've got about 7 ounces or so of crumbled feta, and this I had It was probably more like 8 when I bought it, but I used some, so there's just a little bit left, but that's plenty. The recipe calls for like a 1/2 pound of the feta, and that's fine. I'm doing 1 brick of cream cheese with like 6 or 7 ounces of the crumbled feta. The full recipe is 2 packages of cream cheese with half a pound of feta, but this is going to be perfect. The ratio of feta to cream cheese it doesn't really matter. It's delicious either way. So I'm adding 1 egg, and then I'm going to mix this together very well. Now, you could do this like with a hand mixer if you wish, but you can just do this by hand. And I'm just going to get my towel under here so that my bowl isn't clanging around on me on my counter while I'm trying to mix this. So here, I'm just going to kind of whip the cream cheese, the feta, and the egg and the butter together. You don't need to season this at all with salt and pepper. If you wanted to, you could put some cooked, chopped up spinach in here if you've drained it really well so there's not a lot of water in it. Some spinach in here would be really great. That would make more of like a spanakopita, which is like a spinach and feta Greek pastry, but this cheese pastry is absolutely delicious, and like I said, I've been eating it since high school. So I'm just whisking this together, and that looks perfect. And what I will do is I will stuff this into my phyllo until I run out of filling or I run out of phyllo. So what you need to do is get 2 pieces of phyllo out. And you need to work quickly with phyllo because you do not want it to dry out. If any of you have seen my Epic Greek Feast, you'll see that I've worked with phyllo in that recipe or with a bunch of those recipes. And you really don't want this to dry out because it'll crack on you, and then it's very difficult to work with. So in between rolling out some of the pastries, I'll cover this just with a towel so that it doesn't crack on me. So I will grab 2 sheets of phyllo, and I'll put them on my counter. And I'm just going to measure how far across this is because you want your pastry to be even. So I was trying to decide if I wanted to do 4 strips of dough or 3 strips of dough, but I think doing 3 strips of dough is going to yield like better, nicer looking pastries. So I just measured 3 inches across, and so I'll make 3 strips out of each sheet's worth of the phyllo. So I've kind of made a little notch, and then what I'm going to do with my ruler and my pizza cutter is just cut it straight like that. Now, if you make sure you cut these kind of straight like this, then that just means that your finished pastries will be like very even in size, which means that they will bake evenly, but also they'll look really nice on the plate because everything will be very uniform for you. So if you cut using a pizza cutter, this is the easiest way to do this without like ripping the phyllo and making a mess. Using a knife is much harder, and so now I have these beautiful little strips of phyllo. So now you want to take your butter, and I've got a little bit on my spoon here, so I'm gonna get that off so I don't make a mess, and I will use that to scoop my filling. So I'm just gonna take my melted butter with my pastry brush here, and I'm just gonna dot this. Now, you don't absolutely have to douse your phyllo here with butter. You don't need to completely coat each strip so that it's like saturated with the butter. You just kind of want to dot on some. And then we're going to use the butter to sort of seal the end of the pastry. So no need to be like really aggressive or thick with the butter. But you want to make sure you have enough on there. So I'm just going to take about a tablespoon of filling here. And if I find when I wrap these up that a tablespoon isn't enough, I could always add a little bit more. But generally, a tablespoon of filling per pastry is adequate. And you don't want them to be overstuffed because then they might like burst in the oven. And now you're going to fold these sort of like a flag. I guess that's the easiest way to describe it. So when flags are folded like in the military and presented to people, they're folded in a triangle, and that's how you want to fold this. So I'm just going to fold that up, and then you go up and then over, and I'm kind of pushing the filling down a little bit, and then up, and then over, and then up, and then I'm at the end there, so I'm going to brush some butter on here, and then this little bit of dough will come up and get sealed by that butter, and then you can use your pastry brush just to seal that a little bit more. And then I'm going to put the butter side down on a baking sheet that I've got some foil on that I've used some cooking spray on. So I'm going to keep going with these. Let me show you another one. But I'm going to cover my phyllo so it doesn't dry out. So here we're going up, and then the triangle, and then straight up, and then triangle, and up. And then, like I said, a little more butter. And then your edge here. And then put it on your baking sheet. And so I will keep going with this until I run out of phyllo or I run out of filling. And when I'm all done, I'll show you how many I've got and what they look like. I have 4 more of my tiropita to finish folding, and so I believe when I had these when I was a kid, we probably made them a little smaller. We probably got 4 strips out of each sheet of phyllo, but I made a half a batch, and the yield is about 25 of these, which is perfect for us for our dinner tonight. If there's a couple left over, they'll make a great snack. But if you were to make a full batch of these, then you'll get at least 4 dozen. And if you cut your phyllo a little bit smaller, then you'll actually get more out of it. But I do sort of like this size for it. Now, my phyllo is getting a little dry. That's okay. It's just been on the counter for a little bit. But when you fold these like this, any little tears or rips in the phyllo are very easily concealed. You don't have to be a pastry expert to get these right. And so I'm going to spread a little bit of this extra butter here on the top of these when they're on my baking sheet before they go in the oven. They go in the oven at 350. They bake for about 20 minutes until golden brown. And then let them cool for a couple of minutes before you eat them, because the cheese on the inside will be very, very hot and you don't want to burn your mouth. But these are absolutely delicious, and of course we'll show you what they look like when they come out. But I'm going to show you how to get a little bit of butter on these. Now, I got 1 extra, so I'm going to make my 1 extra pastry fit here. These don't puff very much when they bake. Phyllo dough does not really change in shape when it bakes. And so each one of these is going to get a nice drizzle of butter on the top. You want these to be really crispy and buttery and cheesy. So I will give them each a little bit of a brush of butter, and no need to waste this melted butter. You might as well just put it on top of your dough before it goes in the oven. And like I said, 350 for about 20 minutes. These will be golden brown and crispy, and the cheese in the inside is fabulous. And this is my first tray of my pastries, just like I said, using up my butter. So these end up absolutely golden brown and delicious when they bake. So I will be back with the finished tiropita, and now we're going to also move on to a goat cheese stuffed date. So our next appetizer is a goat cheese bacon wrapped date that we're going to bake in the oven, and then we're going to drizzle some hot honey over the top. So I've got about 2 dozen dates here, and I'm just finishing up getting the seed or pit out of the last couple of dates. You don't want to accidentally eat that. So we are going to fill these with just a plain goat cheese, and then we are going to bake them in a 400-degree oven until the bacon is crispy. And I'm guessing it'll probably take about 15-20 minutes, something like that. And then, like I said, we'll drizzle the hot honey over the top, or maybe serve it on the side for dipping if people don't want it on their date. But these are going to be delicious. So now that all my dates are pitted, I'm just taking my little log of goat cheese here, and using a small spoon just to put a little bit of goat cheese in the center of the date. So maybe like, I don't know, a teaspoon or so. And then you're going to take a half a piece of bacon. I just took my pound of bacon here and I cut it in half that way. And I'm just going to wrap my bacon around my date and set it on my sheet. Now you could use a toothpick if you want to keep these together. I'm going to be brave here and assume they're going to stay together, and I'm not going to need to do that. But you absolutely could secure them with like a toothpick if you'd like. So you do not want to use thick cut bacon with this recipe. You want to use thinner cut bacon. The thick cut is just not going to wrap around the date very well, and also when it cooks, it might break on you, so you don't want that to happen. You definitely want like a thinner bacon for this. And so like I said, just a little bit of goat cheese right in the center. If you wanted to, you could use blue cheese, but goat cheese on these is great. And we have another recipe coming up with some blue cheese, so we decided on goat cheese. Also with this, if your seam of your bacon is at the bottom, then it might help your date to stick together. And I've got sort of an odd shaped piece of bacon here, so just cut that little bit off because it's not cooperating. And then, like I said, if your seam of your bacon is at the bottom, then your date will stay together a little more easily. So here, again, another spoonful of our goat cheese. This is just a plain goat cheese. You could use an herbed one or a flavored goat cheese if you'd like. I just went with like a plain, and I think it's going to be delicious. So I am going to finish stuffing these dates, and I will be back and show you what they look like. All of our dates are now full of goat cheese and wrapped with bacon. Now, if you have a couple that you're afraid might not stay together, you can just take a toothpick here, and you can stick that right through your bacon, through your date, and put it back on your tray. And your toothpick will kind of keep it together. So if you have like a couple odd shaped pieces of bacon like we do, where you're not really sure if it's gonna stay together, just again, take that toothpick, stick that right through, and it should help your bacon stay on your date as it bakes. We're gonna put these in the oven at 400 degrees. What I try to do is just use up all my bacon and use up all my cheese. And so if you have a couple little extra strips here of bacon, that's fine. Just put them on your tray and cook them. And then I'm sure somebody would be happy and willing to eat them up. All you need to do is stuff them and wrap them, and they go right in the oven. Now, when these come out of the oven, we'll get them off of this tray and put them on a plate. We'll drizzle on the hot honey, and they'll be absolutely perfect. So I will show you what they look like when they're done. And also, our little smokies are done. The sauce reduced a little bit. This smells great. I am not a big barbecue sauce person. I've seen recipes where you just cook little smokies with barbecue sauce, and that's fine. I absolutely adore this cranberry sauce version of these because it really doesn't taste anything like barbecue sauce, but it is delicious and sweet and tangy and a little spicy, and they came out great. So anyway, these are gonna go in the oven, and we're gonna show you what they look like when they come out. Our tiropita have come out of the oven, and these look absolutely perfect. They are nice and crispy, they are nice and browned, and they've puffed a little bit. I am sure that the cheese in the center of these is nice and melty, and this is exactly what you want to see, and you should hopefully be able to tell they're nice and crispy. And so one tray is done. I've got the other tray still in the oven. They're just going to cook for maybe another 3 minutes just so that they get just as brown as these. But this is what they look like when they're done. I believe we checked these at around the 15-minute mark, and they were actually already done. But I did cook these in my top oven, and I do believe my top oven sometimes runs a little hot. So we had it set at 350, and these cooked in about 15 minutes. The recipe says up to 20. So you just have to check your pastries as they cook and see what they look like. But this is exactly what you want them to look like when they're done. So our next appetizer is what we call Brie kisses in my family. This is a recipe that I got from my aunt. I've been making these since I was a teenager as well. And this is a delicious and very impressive looking recipe. So I have a sheet of puff pastry here that I've just put on my counter. It's defrosted, and I've put a little flour on it, and I'm just using my rolling pin to roll this out a little bit. And this recipe could not be simpler. Now, we make these with Brie and some jam. We make them in a mini muffin tin, and these are absolutely delicious. So what I'm going to do with this puff pastry is just cut it in half, and then I'm probably going to cut each half in thirds. And it is okay to eyeball this. And then I'm going to just basically do the same thing going the other direction, in half and in thirds. And you basically just want little squares of your puff pastry. And so that is perfect. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there should be 36 of these, and this is absolutely easy and could not be more delicious. Now, I might need a second muffin tin for this. I probably will, but I do like to sort of alternate these because sometimes they will puff up and stick to each other. Now, what you're going to do is just put your little puff pastry squares into your sprayed mini muffin tin sections. And then once you've done this, and actually these are small, which is fine. They're bite-sized, and that's what you want. You don't need them to be enormous. But we're going to put a piece of Brie in the center of each one of these, and we're going to add some pepper jelly to some, and we're just going to add some plain blackberry jam to others. And actually, I think these will be okay. Even if they puff up, they're not going to stick to each other. So I will just spray the remaining compartments, and we will maybe not need the other muffin tin, but maybe we will. We'll see. So all of these are just going to get placed in the little holes here. And like I said, my aunt gave me this recipe when I was a kid. I have made this for years and years. It is a delicious party appetizer. You can make these ahead and bake them right before your guests arrive. You can make them ahead and freeze them uncooked, and then bake them from frozen right when your guests arrive, either way. So now we just have little cubes of Brie here that I'm going to put in each square. And they're more like rectangles of Brie, but that's fine. And our puff pastry will like puff up and sort of make a kiss shape, for lack of a better word. We call them Brie kisses because they kind of look like a pucker when they're together and they bake. And so our little hunk of Brie in each one. And I did trim some of the rind off of this Brie. And I do have 2 rounds of Brie just in case I need more. Now, if you don't like Brie, you could certainly do this with any other kind of cheese, but really Brie is absolutely the best. And then I'll just move these out of the way. I'll probably need my other muffin tin just for a couple more, but that is just fine. And now half of these I'm going to fill with our pepper jelly, so just a very small spoonful, maybe like half a teaspoon or so of pepper jelly goes in them. And you can put the pepper jelly in underneath the cheese. You can put it on the top. I prefer to put it on the top of the cheese. And these are delicious. So I will remember that this side is the pepper jelly side because our blackberry jam is going on the other side. And it's very easy to tell the difference color-wise between the two. But if you're using, say, strawberry and raspberry, or you're using colors that could be mistaken, then you just want to make sure you remember which side of the pan has which kind of jam. So that is half with our pepper jelly, and now I'm going to use our homemade blackberry jam on this other half. Like I said, this is a very quick, very easy appetizer. It looks so impressive when it comes out of the oven. My package of puff pastry did come with 2 sheets, so I have a whole nother sheet in the freezer ready for the next time that I want to make these, or if I want to make something different.
Ziggy, stop.
So really, you know, you can actually end up getting like 6 dozen of these if you wanted to use up your whole box of your puff pastry. So these are going into a 400-degree oven, probably about 12 to 15 minutes, and I will show you what these look like when they're done. Our next 2 appetizers are more of like an assemble and eat kind of thing. Our first appetizer is crostini, so that's basically toasted baguette with fig jam and some blue cheese crumbles and a little balsamic vinegar sprinkled over the top or drizzled over the top. Before we can assemble those, though, we have to toast up our French bread. I'm going to cut this a little bit on an angle. Those little end pieces, that's fine. We'll just kind of nibble on those. But if you cut this on an angle, it looks so much prettier than if you cut it, you know, just into rounds. And so, like I said, those little, you know, end pieces or whatever, we'll nibble on, no problem. I'm gonna get these pieces of baguette in my air fryer to toast up. My oven is busy. It is cooking up some of our other appetizers. So I don't wanna delay getting this food on the table for us. I'm going to just cut probably a good, you know, 10 slices of this. If you're doing this for a party, you can make as many of these as you'd like. For us tonight, I think maybe 10 or so is enough. And because we're having 10 different appetizers today for dinner, so a very nice variety, but I'm not going to need maybe more than 10. So just using a serrated knife makes it much easier to cut your bread. And if you cut it in these longer, like angled pieces, it just gets nice and crispy. You can brush these with a little bit of olive oil or butter before you toast them if you want to. I'm not going to do that tonight. We are eating so many lovely, rich things with butter and cheese and whatever that I just don't want to add any extra to this. I'm going to keep it really simple, but you could actually butter them up. So I'm going to get these in my air fryer to toast, and then I'm going to go on with my cucumber, salmon, and cheese appetizer. Our next appetizer is probably going to be one of my daughter's favorite. She absolutely loves sushi. She likes anything seafood, and this is going to be a smoked salmon appetizer. So I have just a seedless cucumber here, and I am going to sort of even out the ends a little bit. And I am going to just cut these. Now you could sort of peel this to make it look a little prettier, so I think I'll do that. I mean, we're entertaining ourselves tonight, so we don't have to be too fancy, but peeling sort of every other row of your cucumber like this makes it sort of a little prettier than if you just leave it like as is. So I'm just taking my peeler and giving the edge a little bit of a decorative touch. It'll taste the same, but it will look a little bit nicer. So there, so now I'll get that out of the way, and then I'm going to just cut this cucumber into good size rounds, a little bit, I would say somewhere between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 of an inch. And these are gonna go on our little plate. And I think, you know, a lot of our appetizers today are buttery or they have pastry. A lot of them have cheese. This one does have cheese. But I think with a little bit of vegetable added to this one, it's maybe going to feel a little bit lighter and a little bit healthier than some of the other recipes that we've made today. Now, if, you know, you're entertaining and you're making stuff for the holiday season, I'm all for being healthy, but sometimes you just got to enjoy your holiday. So it's okay, absolutely, to make a completely healthy holiday feast, but I think this one could easily be part of that. Some of these other recipes, maybe not so much, but I also think if you're having little bits and bites of things and you're not just eating like a whole tray of something, that it's okay to indulge a little bit. So I got some Boursin cheese here. This is just garlic and fine herb flavored Boursin cheese. And we're going to use this on top of our cucumbers with our salmon and a little bit of dill. Now you could use just plain cream cheese if you wanted to, but I just thought that the boursin would be really, really nice with this. So I'm just gonna get a knife. So with a knife here, I'm just gonna spread a little bit of the boursin on top of the cucumber. Now you could also leave a couple of these without the cheese. That way if somebody just wants the salmon and the cucumber, they want a bit of a lighter bite, then they can have that, and they don't have to have the cheese if they don't want to. I think that this boursin is going to be a nice touch with the salmon. Like I said, you can just use some plain cream cheese if you can't get the boursin cheese, but this is going to be very tasty. They do have other flavors of the boursin cheese at the store, but I think that the garlic and herb one is going to match nicely with the salmon. If you have fresh dill, the fresh dill would be really great on top of these. We just have a little bit of dried, so that's what we're going to go with. If you wanted to put a little bit of green onion on these as well, you could do that as well. And this is a garlic and fine herb cheese. I've also seen that they have like a boursin at the store with chives in it, and that might actually be really nice with the smoked salmon. So again, this is a very easy appetizer to put together. You could put this together ahead of your party, and you can put it in the fridge, and then as your guests arrive, just pull it out and you can start eating and enjoy. And I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of these left over because I think these are going to be great. And I'm just going to leave these last couple on the end here without the cheese, just in case somebody doesn't want the cheese. And then this is just some cold smoked salmon that I got at the store. And what I will do is take a piece of this on my cutting board. I'm just going to cut off pieces, kind of set them on top. Of my cucumber slice. And a bit of salmon here goes a long way because you're just putting a little piece on each cucumber. And so this is actually a very affordable appetizer to make because you do not need to buy a tremendous amount of the salmon to be able to do this. And like I said, these ones at the end here, I didn't put the cheese on just in case we'd like them without the cheese. And these will be tasty as well. And then I'm just going to take some dill, like some dried dill here, and just give this just a little bit of a sprinkle over the top. It's going to look beautiful. It's going to add a little bit of a dill flavor. Like I said, fresh dill here would be fabulous, but the dried works just as well. And this is another simple and easy and quick appetizer that everyone is going to love. Our oven has been busy, but our Brie bites are ready, and these will come out of your mini muffin tin pretty easily with an offset spatula. So here I'm just going to pop these out, and I'm going to try to keep my sweet ones on the one side and my savory on the other. So these are the blackberry ones. And see, they look like a little kiss, which is really cute. I'll show you one of these. Like probably this one is the most kiss-like, but the edges kind of puff up, and we have a puppy saying hello. So Miss Ellie, you're saying hello to the people? But she does not get to have puff pastry or Brie. That would probably not sit too well in a dog's stomach. So these ones are the pepper jelly ones. And these are a definite winner at any party. The combination of the puff pastry with your jam and your cheese is just, it's a winning combination. And these usually are one of the first to disappear at a party. And so we are going to get these on the table. Now we also have our dates that were wrapped with bacon, and they have goat cheese in them, and some of them did decide to open up on us. I'm putting these on a plate with a little bit of a paper towel just to absorb some of that excess bacon grease. You could also make these with prosciutto if you wish. They're delicious with prosciutto. These cooked at I believe 400 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes or so. You just basically want to wait until your bacon is cooked to take them out of the oven. You don't want raw bacon, but you certainly don't want them to be like overcooked, so you just have to keep an eye on them. So now that they're sort of draining on this paper towel, I'm gonna leave them there just for a minute or two. We're going to drizzle the hot honey on these dates once we get them on a serving plate. But like I said, I just want to drain these a little bit before I put them on a serving plate. I've moved our bacon wrapped dates to a plate. And now I'm just going to drizzle on some hot honey. And I'm not going to cover them completely, but I just want them to all have like just a touch of the hot honey on them. I think it's going to be really tasty, a nice contrast between the richness of the bacon, the sweet of the date, the little sweet spicy of the honey, and then the creaminess of the goat cheese is going to be great. So these are all set, and we're going to get nibbling on these, and we're going to put together our fig crostini. I'm going to assemble our crostini now. So I've toasted up this baguette. Like I said, I just use my air fryer to do it. You could absolutely do this in the oven if you want to. Whatever works for you. And so I'm just putting some fig preserves on each piece of the bread. I'm going to top this with some Stilton, which is a blue cheese. Now you could use any blue cheese that you like. There's some blue cheese at the store that's sort of like a mixture of a Brie and a blue cheese. You could use that. You could just use some crumbly blue cheese. You could go with like a milder blue cheese, like a gorgonzola, but I think you could totally use the hot honey on these if you wanted to. Because we've already used the hot honey with our dates, I'm not going to put it in two places, but I think this could also be a good use for the hot honey if you wanted to. So again, just fig preserves on my toasty baguette. Now we've already used Brie with our Brie kisses, but you could also top these with Brie if you don't like blue cheese. So there's a lot of options here. I think the fig jam pairs nicely with blue cheese. It pairs nicely with Brie. You could even just do a really nice sharp cheddar, like a sharp white cheddar on top of this with the balsamic. That would also be absolutely delicious. So really any kind of like drier, crumblier cheese with a little bit of a sharper flavor. Even like maybe an aged sharp provolone would be nice. So lots of different options here. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this blue cheese and put it on top of our crostini. And like I said, I'm going to drizzle these with a little balsamic glaze, which I think is going to be very tasty. And this is something you could prep a little bit of ahead of time. You could toast up your baguettes and then just kind of put them in an airtight container like on your counter. They don't have to be served warm. These are perfect room temperature. So you could toast them up ahead of time, maybe an hour or so before your guests arrive, and then you can assemble them just as everybody's arriving. All right, so we've got our blue cheese all over that delicious fig jam, And now I'm just going to put a little drizzle of this balsamic glaze on the top. And the balsamic glaze is sort of the same color as the fig jam. So it's not as noticeable that it's on there, but that flavor of that balsamic glaze, like the slight tartness of it, with that sweetness of the fig, and then that delicious, really kind of almost stinky cheese, the Stilton, is going to be phenomenal. So that is another appetizer done. And now we are going to make some spiced cashews. A nice addition to any party is something you can just kind of grab and nibble, grab and just kind of nibble with your hands. It doesn't have to be like a formal appetizer. So we are going to do some seasoned and toasted up cashews. You could really do this with any nut, but cashews are absolutely delicious. And you have to start with a raw nut. So whatever you do, do not use an already roasted or salted nut. You want a raw, unsalted nut for this recipe. So I am going to separate an egg. Now I need just the egg white for this recipe. And so my yolk I will use tomorrow, maybe in our breakfast or something. But right now I just need to whisk up this egg white until it's frothy. I'm then going to add some seasonings to it and then add to my cashews, and they're going to bake in the oven at 350 degrees for about 12 to 15 minutes. We're going to stir them halfway through, and then when they come out of the oven, we're going to toss on a little sugar and a little salt and mix them up, and these are going to be delicious. Now, the recipe originally called for like some thyme and rosemary and some other things that I don't really like. And so we're substituting a different seasoning that we have in the house that we think we're gonna like, and we think this is gonna be delicious. But I will post what I made, understanding that you can use kind of any seasoning that you would like to for this. So the recipe just says to whisk that until frothy. So my egg whites are frothy, and to that I'm going to add a tablespoon plus a teaspoon of seasoning. Any kind of seasoning that you like. We have this Kinder Cowboy Butter with Dijon butter and chili, and it tastes great. It's delicious. So because we like the flavor of it, we're going to use this for our seasoned nuts. And like I said, you could use pretty much any kind of seasoning that you want to use, but I am not a particular fan of rosemary, so I would prefer to not put that in something that I'm going to eat. So we're going to use this and see how it comes out. And so we're just going to mix the seasonings in with that whipped up egg white. And then we are adding that to the nuts and coating the nuts with that egg white and seasoning. And that egg white is going to basically act like some glue, and it's going to get the seasoning to stick to the nuts so that when they roast, the seasoning doesn't fall off and burn on the tray, and then the nuts end up completely unseasoned. So that egg white is important. You want that in there because you want your seasoning to stick to the nuts and not just fall off on your tray. So I'm just going to mix this thoroughly. Then we're just going to put this on a baking sheet that is lined with parchment, and like I said, 12 to 15 minutes in the oven. At 350, stir halfway through, and we'll have some delicious seasoned nuts. All right, so these are now going to go in the oven, and we will show you what they look like when they're done. Yet another appetizer is about to go in the oven. This is a cheesy pull-apart garlicky bread. Now, you can make this with those round loaves of bread. And so we tried to find one of those at our store today, and the only ones they had available were sourdough. And we're not huge fans of sourdough, so I didn't want to make a whole big loaf of something that we maybe aren't going to enjoy. So I got this Italian loaf of bread, and we're going to make it with this. But like I said, you can use the round loaves, and they would be good as well. All you're going to do is score your bread, but you don't want to cut it all the way through to the bottom. You want to just sort of go almost all the way down, but just stop just short of slicing all the way through. And I'm doing this on an angle because we're going to go across in the other direction and almost make like, I guess, like a checkerboard design here. And then we're going to stuff this bread with melted garlicky butter and cheese and some seasonings, and it's going to be fantastic. And it's going to then get wrapped up in some foil and baked into the oven, and it's basically like a pull-apart garlic bread. So just watch those fingers. Always use a serrated knife for this. And like I said, you don't want to cut all the way through. You want to stop just short of all the way through, so that then you still get like the pull apart effect of this. So now, like my bread, see, it's cut, but like I said, still attached at the bottom, and that is exactly what you want. Now I've got 1 stick of melted butter here, and to that I'm going to add 4 chopped up cloves of garlic. If you wanted to use garlic powder instead of fresh garlic, you could, but trust me, the actual whole garlic cloves are just delicious. I'm just going to add a little bit of dried parsley to this as well. You could add fresh if you want. You could add some Italian seasoning. Whatever you like, you can add to this. I'm going to give this a whisk. And I'm using salted butter, so I'm not going to add any salt to this. Now I'm going to wrap this up in foil, because this is going to bake in the oven wrapped up, and we're also going to shove some mozzarella cheese in here. So first I'm going to take a pastry brush and I am going to get all this delicious butter in the bread. So I'm just basically like shoving the brush down in the bread with all the garlic here. And if I can't get all my little bits of garlic in the bread here with this pastry brush, that's fine. I'm gonna pick them up at the end and just put them right in the bread. But you want to make sure that you go in both directions with this. So you're gonna go on all the sides of this cut up bread and get this seasoned butter in there. And you don't want to skip any sections. And if we have any of this butter left after I'm done using this brush and getting everything in here, then I'm just going to dump it right onto the top. 1 stick of butter should do just fine for this. But you may actually need to make 2 loaves of this for parties if you've got a lot of people coming over, because this is absolutely delicious and people will devour it. And really the idea of it, because you cut it like this, is that you can pull it apart, like pull out hunks of bread. And so very fun and interactive way to eat some cheesy garlic bread. And like I said, you just want to get your garlicky butter into every section of this bread. And then we're going to wrap it up and bake it in the oven. So we're going to do a 400-degree oven for probably about 20 to 25 minutes. We'll check it partway through just to make sure that it is cooking. And you know what? I'm not going to worry about having messy hands here. I'm just going to pick up these hunks of garlic and get them in there, because we don't want to leave this garlic behind. It's going to be absolutely delicious. And some of it can sit on the top of the bread too. That's fine. I'm just going to drizzle the rest of this butter here. I'm just making sure to get like every section of this bread equally covered in butter. Very healthy recipe. Now the cheese we're going to get in here. And so I don't want to get all my buttery garlicky stuff in my cheese. So I'm just going to kind of dump a little bit of cheese there on my foil. And then same thing, I'm just going to sprinkle this cheese in my sections. I'm sprinkling my mozzarella cheese here in between my little slices of bread. And this garlic butter smells phenomenal. think this is probably going to end up being our favorite thing. Now, if you wanted to serve this with a little dish of marinara, you could do that. That would be absolutely delicious. And I would say I probably used a cup and a half of cheese. Really, you don't have to be very specific when you're measuring this. I wouldn't go completely overboard and, you know, put a pound of cheese in here, but honestly, like, that seems to be a good amount of cheese. I'm going to wrap this up tightly with foil, put it in the oven, and I will show you what it looks like when it comes out. So to round out our dinner of lots of delicious and rich appetizers, we're adding a little bit of salami here. I just picked up this salami trio from the store, and so nothing incredibly fancy here, but this is going to be put on the table for us to enjoy with our appetizers. Now, our nuts came out of the oven, and so our directions say to put them in a bowl, and then we are to toss a teaspoon of salt mixed with 2 teaspoons of sugar over the top and kind of toss them while they're still warm, and that will finish these up. And these are going to be a great appetizer or holiday snack. These might actually be a really nice gift if you make a bunch of these and you put them in like a pretty jar or a nice container and give these to people. This might actually just make a lovely gift, really. So I've mixed together my sugar and my salt, and I'm just going to kind of top these nuts with that, and then we're going to kind of give them like a toss. They are warm, so hopefully this sugar and salt will do its thing and combine nicely with the warm cashews, and it smells phenomenal, and I'm sure these are going to be delicious. So I'm just kind of giving these a nice mix here. I don't want all that salt and sugar to fall to the bottom. I'll just dump some on the counter while I'm at it, but these look and smell phenomenal, and so that is ready to go on the table with our salami. Now, lastly, we are going to make sort of a little sweet treat to end our night of rich and delicious appetizers. This is just half a brick of cream cheese, and I am just going to use some muscle here to spread this on the bottom of this plate. Now, you could absolutely make a bigger serving of this. You could use a full brick of cream cheese. When I make this for a larger crowd, I will put it in the bottom of like a tart pan or a pie plate. And then what we are going to do is top this with some caramel dip. So this is just caramel dip from the produce department of my store. And this happens to be a Marzetti brand of caramel dip. And we are going to put some caramel dip on top of this cream cheese. And we're going to spread this out. Now, there really doesn't have to be a specific amount that you use. It's not, you know, it's a very easy assembly of things. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just put on as much caramel on top of the cream cheese as you want. Now, you could also top this with a little bit of toasted walnuts. You could put some toffee bits on top of this if you'd like to. Maybe even some chopped up peanuts, whatever you'd like would go really nicely on top of this. You can just have it plain just like this as well. And then what I'm going to do is take some nice clean apples here. These are a tart apple. You don't want to use a super sweet apple for this because this dip is so sweet, but we're going to slice up our apples. And then we're just going to arrange our apples on the plate, kind of pushed into the side of the, basically like the dip that we just made. And then everybody at the table can just grab their hunk of apple and scoop it forward and scoop up some of the cream cheese with the actual caramel dip and eat it. And it is so delicious and so easy. This is actually a great after-school snack for kids if you want to make this. You can also do this if you want with some Greek yogurt. If you'd like to make this a little healthier, you could just put some nice Greek yogurt, even maybe the vanilla Greek yogurt on the bottom of the plate, top it with the caramel, and then use your apples to dip. Really, you could make this a very healthy treat if you wanted to. And that is that. So I am going to show you that cheesy bread when it comes out of the oven. I'm also going to show you an assortment of everything that we made because we're not quite done. And so we'll be right back. Okay, it has been a very busy day in the pickup kitchen, and we have finished all 10 of our recipes. Now, I did something a little cute with our salami, and I just made a little Christmas tree here. I folded up some salami in a Christmas tree shape. I put a little hunk of cheese on the top and a little pickle on the bottom to make it look like a trunk. And I think that would be a cute idea to do with your tray of salami. You certainly don't have to, but it's just a toothpick, and I just folded up some salami and put it on there and just kind of thought it was fun. You could absolutely do this and kind of intersperse it on your plates of your appetizers, and it would look really cute, and I'm sure people would gobble it up. So I think everybody in the house has had a chance to try everything except our cheesy bread. Our cheesy bread just came out of the oven. It's piping hot and smells wonderful. I've been asking everybody what their favorite recipes are, and it's sort of a tie between a whole lot of things, but those cucumber and smoked salmon and boursin cheese bites disappeared. There's literally only 5 left, so I made a whole plate of those, and they're nearly gone, so I think they're probably the winner. And I'm going to give this cheesy bread a taste, and then the rest of my family is going to dive in. But here, see, you just grab a piece of your cheesy bread and pull it out, and it's absolutely delicious. It's basically like a cheesy garlic bread, and absolutely phenomenal. So I would like to thank all of you for being here and joining us in the Pickup Kitchen. We are so appreciative that you are here and you're enjoying our videos. And I'd like to thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe. And I hope that you try some of these recipes for your holiday gathering soon. Thanks and good night.